reputation and character are lifelong traits. Knowing how to calculate an IRR.
Welcome to Behind the Frame, where we go beyond the LinkedIn bios and Instagram highlight reels to talk about what really happens when you're building something from scratch. I'm Jay Duffy, co-founder of Frame Wealth Partners, business owner, husband, dad, and guy who still wonders if winging it counts as a legitimate growth strategy. Spoiler, it does sometimes. Join me and my amazing co-hosts, Morgan Watson and Annette Quigley, as we sit down with someone who's built a business or is knee-deep in the messy middle of it. And we talk about the real stuff, the pivots, the late nights, the wins no one celebrated, and the lessons no one warned them about. So grab a coffee or something stronger. We're going behind the frame.
Welcome back, everyone, to, I believe this is our
17th
episode, maybe, of Behind the Frame, where we talk about building, running, and surviving business ownership. Again, my name is Morgan Watson. I'm here with my partner, Annette Quigley. Annette, we got two great guests today. But before we get started, I want to kind of, as we always do, talk about our weekend wins. How was the weekend at the Quigley household?
So we were just talking, I'm an animal lover at heart. Yep. So I actually went to a local fundraiser. It's a shelter in Maryland called Bring 'em Home. And every year, the gal that runs it has a pretty nice shrimp and bull roast event with silent auctions and raffles and things of that nature. Actually, both my mom and my sister and I were all three lucky. We all won something.
Oh, very nice.
But was very happy to see that the proceeds went toward the animal shelter. So good time, good music, but my realizing I am getting to that age where when I dance the night away, I feel it the next day. So that was my my revelation.
That was your okay, that's good. Yeah, ours was we had a great weekend. So for those who don't know, my daughter went to college for lacrosse. She's a really good lacrosse player, but blew out her knee, going into her senior year, missed her senior year. First game back, freshman year, blew out her other knee. 4 surgeries later, she finally got back on the field last week. So that was 3 years in the making. So that was a big moment for the Watson household to see Meryl out there finally.
She stays healthy.
Yeah. She walked on and walked off the field. So that was a good thing to see. Good. So that was our weekend win. So we were happy with it. Well, today we're joined by really two entrepreneurs, Kurt Felmar, is correct? Yep. And Michael Clark, Detailed Solutions, BTR Corporation as well, and Park and Social. So kind of dabbling in quite a few areas. And what we talked about earlier is really kind of seems very much a passion project. That kind of what you do as a career is also really where your passions lie. So thank y'all very much for joining with us today. And I want to just talk to you a little bit about kind of your business and how it's grown and kind of where you see it going from there.
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. So, Detailed Solutions. So you worked, tell us how that kind of started.
Yeah, so Detailed Solutions kind of came to fruition when I was a kid. When I was very, very young, I always loved cars and wanted to get into something in that field when I got older. And when I was 13, started cleaning cars, my neighbors' cars, my parents' cars, my family's cars, and that just continued to transition more and more towards a business. Ultimately, when I got to working age, my father's an old school company man, said, hey, you got to get a good job, you got to find a real career, and kind of pushed me away from entrepreneurship because he saw how hard it was for my grandfather, who was self-employed back in the day, very successful guy. And ultimately, I joined McCormick right down the road, and I spent a pretty good storied career there. I was there for 14 years and left, but let's go back to 2013. I moved to Parkville right by Pappas's, bought a nice house that had a 800 and some square foot garage, and I immediately told my then girlfriend, not yet fiance, like, hey, I'm opening my detail business here out of the garage, and it's just continued to grow and grow since then. I got my first employee, opened our first shop, and here we're about to move into a 10,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility. We got 10 employees, and once Park and Social opens, I'll be opening a second location there. So we're actually at the 3-year mark since I left McCormick. I've been full-time in my business, but it has been a legal entity since 2014.
Wow. So was there a pivotal moment when you said, I need to take the leap? Because clearly it's something you probably thought about for a while before you did it.
Yeah, but I should have done it much sooner, but I'm actually glad I didn't, right? Hindsight's 2020. And I do say there's no such thing as the right time is now. And I did take the guidance of some family members and all who I've learned will always tell you to take the safe route. Not always the best advice for you, but the safe route. And I have no qualms with that because I learned so much from being in middle and upper management at McCormick that I learned so much about how a company structure will help the success of the people below it and how SOPs and policies and procedures will help. We were just talking about how the operational side is the easy side versus, a lot of my competitors and whatnot lack that. So I have the business savvy thanks to my time in corporate America, but I have the passion because I love cars and I just love what we do. So yeah, there was no real time, although I will say we outsourced our IT department. I was an IT manager. Things got a little hairy paired with COVID, getting phone calls from China in the middle of the night when, I've got a little one at home and everything. Got a bit much, and I think that was probably a bit of it, paired the extra work and being outsourced. I was still insourced, but managing that contract, it just got a bit much. I fell out of love with what I did there.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and Michael, your company's BTR Capital Group.
That's right.
All right. Tell us a little bit about it and kind of how it started.
So, unlike Kurt, I can't even spell SOP. I was always, I bucked the trend, didn't like to follow rules. Started out my career working with some people, not for some people, but with some people. Struggled with that because I always like to make my own rules. So eventually I kind of wandered out on my own, started BTR Capital Group. First thing we do is buy commercial property, predominantly in the Baltimore area. And I enjoyed it. I always used to say, bricks and sticks don't talk back to you. So I was kind of out on my own. Sure, I had people that worked with me. But for the most part, I was running my own show, and I liked that. As I matured into that career and ended up dealing with more and more tenants, and some I liked, a lot of which I didn't, I decided that I wanted to be both the landlord and the tenant. So first venture was we started a warehousing company. It made sense. I owned a lot of warehouses. I had watched a lot of my tenants throughout the years operate warehousing businesses. I felt somehow adept at doing it. I hung my shingle out. The first project I got was big, bad, and nasty. I cried for help within the first 3 months. My wife was naive enough to join me, and we were off and running. And we worked very, very hard, made our own rules, did a great job, and then this wonderful thing called COVID came along. And unlike a lot of people who obviously suffered through that time, it was great to be in the warehousing business. As inventories were exploding all across the country, so was our warehouse. So we got that company up and running, and unfortunately, I got bored, and then I started a bunch of other things, and one of which is Park and Social. So Park and Social, you mentioned, is it a passion project? I never was a car guy. I did drive a 1967 Skylark convertible when I was a little kid, and it leaked like a sieve and didn't quite make it more than a year or two before we had to put the thing to bed. But really what Park and Social about is relationships.
Yep.
And as I've gotten older and established myself in my career, I kind of started having visions of creating, let's say, a little bit more of a legacy asset. I started thinking about relationships and the impact that COVID and social media and all the other things has had in our society, and I wanted to do something about it. And so that's how I landed at Park and Social.
Right. Yeah, it's I was kind of getting ready for this, doing some research, and Annette and I were going through it. What's interesting is, for business owners, first of all, I always say you're born an employer or an employee. I think the problems, one's not better than the other, they're just different. Where there's a problem is when you're an employee and try to become an employer or vice versa. I said, I would be a terrible employee. I very much want to do it my way. So I understand that completely. But businesses have customers, they have clients, but y'all have seemed to really grow communities with the Park and Social, with your business. And And was that the intent from day one? Did it kind of evolve into that? How did you kind of get there where you have the passion, not just for what you do, but surrounding yourself with the people you enjoy doing it with, either in the work side or, again, in the customer and client side as well?
Yeah, I can start with that one for sure. I've got a great group of employees that are also, I'll call it community or family. Much like Michael, I work with my wife. My brother-in-law works with me, and actually some of my employees have been damn near lifelong friends. I call him my consigliere. He's my right-hand man. We went to kindergarten together. So, I enjoy having the right people around me, whether they're friends or not. So that's really important. But also, when we talk about the consumer or the customer side of things, we're here to solve your problems and make your life easier. So it's really easy for us to become friends with you. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, we've built that to where people are like, oh, I saw you did this, or I saw you guys were on vacation, or all those things. So we're doing the same with them. We're building a friendship with them. And we take it a step farther. We're actually getting ready at Park and Social to do a charity event here in a couple weeks, but I've done things of that nature in the past, and the amount of support because of that community has been instrumental in the success of those events, but friendships and networking down the line. So our customers have helped us with some business stuff, but we've also helped them with life improvements and other sides of things, whether it's networking with people or taking care of their vehicles and assets. And, our network helps them with things around their house at times too. So we try to build that on all sides because it just makes life better. And that's what's been important to me. It is a passionate thing across the board, and how do we make everyone's lives better is important. It's not just cars to me.
Yeah, makes sense. So was it you starting the Park and Social and then saying, hey, it would be nice to have an area where I can detail the vehicles that we're storing? Or how did that conversation take place when you decided to, kind of partner together as you are now?
I think Kurt was a real natural fit for us at Park and Social. Again, I didn't have a whole lot of expertise on the whole car side of it, and half of our company, Park, is car focused, and so I needed that. I needed that expertise. I needed those relationships. I needed those SOPs, and I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Kurt early on. And as I was cultivating the idea, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Kurt. We kind of hit it off immediately. I appreciate his approach. I appreciate his experience. And for me, it was just a real natural fit.
Okay, great.
So building a business, what were some of the early lessons, to the good or the bad, that you think really shaped kind of how you've grown your business?
Mike, if you think, pop in there first. I'm gonna think about this one.
So I'll say it this way, and I'll pose it more as a generational question, right? So, or answer, I should say. I graduated from college. I think back in the day, colleges did a lot to pump up your ego and make you feel like you were brilliant and you knew everything. And so you come into the working world with that background and a set of skills that don't always translate, right? But for me personally, I was a lot more transactional. I was out to prove that I was the smartest guy in the room, for better, for worse. And I thought that my education and my work ethic, because I always worked hard, would get me there. And to some degree it did. It helped advance my career, no doubt about that. But what I learned, fortunately, relatively early in my career is, reputation and character are lifelong traits. Knowing how to calculate an IRR, that's nice, but it's not a life skill. And so I focused very early on in trying to do the right things by people. And what I'm realizing now, I'm pushing 60 years old, and what I'm realizing now is that that's kind of the greatest asset that I have, and that I think anybody in the business world can have, is that relationship. Those relationships become hugely important as you get later on in your life. You don't have to interview 3 contractors to, put on a new roof on a building, because you have a relationship with a guy that knows how to do it and that he's going to treat you right, and vice versa. So that's kind of the way I would phrase that.
routine.
That makes sense. And you mentioned, obviously, your staff is like family, some related, actual family. How do you get them to buy into your vision?
Honestly, I haven't had that struggle, right? I think I've got a big personality. I'm quite charismatic. I think most people have just bought in. But I think the real thing there is that they see the success of it. They see the vision. And it's also, we're all pretty close. So we share a similar vision, and they believe in it right off the rip. But I think sometimes, it's just a matter of making people understand the long-term strategy and the benefits of doing it a certain way has been the biggest one for us.
What's been harder than what you expected it to be?
I'll take a shot at that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think, we have this shared vision. We have this culture we try to create. We come at it from an entrepreneurial bent. It's our business. And for the most part, there isn't anything we would do to not make it successful. It's challenging to find partners, people, employees that, I never would expect them to have the passion that I do. 50%, show up on time, do your job. So it is, you were talking about your family and having family members, and do they share the vision? I think that's great if it works.
Yeah.
But I think that is one of the biggest challenges in entrepreneur and small businesses, finding those people that share the vision, because most of us are not in a position to go hire 5 layers of management and, spend weeks doing strategic plans and, what'd you call that thing? SOPs. We don't have the time and the wherewithal to do that. So it is incumbent on the people that we surround ourselves to grasp that vision without a whole lot of direction, and hopefully, jump in with us.
Yeah, and I think doubling down on that, one thing that I learned is, whether it's an employee or a partner we've talked about, is people try and sell themselves.
Yeah.
And in that honeymoon phase, they sell themselves a lot of times for more than they really are. And then you see their true colors, and getting those people that will continue to go above and beyond and get that yin and yang and take a little bit extra off of your plate or take a little bit more off of somebody else to make sure that we're all going towards that goal and that mission. That's a hard one to find. And I think that probably is the employee side or, the management side, taking that extra bit to help the organization or just the individual grow is always hard.
So do you have a timeline? So where's that kind of line in the sand where they're with us or they're not, we can't keep growing with them?
I wish I could say that was formulaic, because I wouldn't mind having a formula to keep me disciplined. I think the answer is no, for me. Being in the warehousing business, one of the first things that I tried to do when we had some success is reach out to some of the employees, help them in life, do whatever I could. And I enjoyed it, but my success rate was pretty low.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I constantly battle with myself between, should I reach out to this next person or not, because the last 4 people burned me. Inevitably, I usually do. But you're looking for signs of hope. You're looking, you want people to succeed. If you wouldn't be owning a business if you didn't, right? So you want people to succeed, and you want to do as much as you can for them, but at some point, you got to give up. And what that point is, I think, varies from person to person.
I'll agree. It's quite situational. I think one thing that I look at is when it starts to impact others, right? We talk about cancers and what do you do with cancer? You either cut out or get rid of it, or it kills you. And I think that's one of those things when it impacts the business in a negative fashion, or if it impacts the team in a negative fashion, that's ultimately when it's time. But we don't like to give up on people. We talked about that side of it, and it's hard. there is no line in the sand, because a lot of times we are empathetic people as business owners, and we do try and save somebody or help somebody more than we should, and it ultimately does hurt us oftentimes.
Yeah, it's tough when you have a track record of success. That, okay, I can make this successful as well, right? It sometimes you can, sometimes you just can't, and those are the parts I think that people don't see kind of behind the curtain as a business owner. Those are the bigger struggles.
Yeah.
Is how do you support someone but still stay on mission?
Yeah. And so as far as, because obviously you each have your own staff and then you kind of collaborate. So did you feel kind of more natural, like I'm going to do the operational side, the SOPs, as we've mentioned several times, or is it I'm going to do the marketing side, or do you feel like you both have to kind of collaborate on that level as well?
I mean, I think that, the relationship I have with Kurt is he's not dissimilar from me. He has better tattoos than I do. He certainly has different talents and strengths than I do. There's no doubt about that. And I think as we've matured as partners, we've picked up on that, and we, lean in one direction or the other depending upon who's better at it. But I think most importantly is we both run our own businesses, and we both realize that you have to wear all the different hats. And so we haven't compartmentalized our relationship that much, because we all have to be good at operations. We all have to be good at marketing. We all have to be good at employee development. That's just part of the business. So we haven't defined it that tightly yet.
Okay.
So we're going to kind of transition kind of to what we call our lightning round, or hot or not. So we're just going to give you different little sentences, different ideas. Tell us, is it hot within your industry or not? You can elaborate if you choose to. All right. Turning passion into business.
Hot.
How about scaling fast?
Buzzword, challenging, needed.
Okay.
Luxury memberships.
Hot.
Taking on investors.
Not.
Not, because then they have a say-so, right?
That's right.
Risk versus security.
Calculated risk.
Think about it every day.
Mm-hmm.
How about how do you manage kind of that work-life balance?
I call it work-life integration. There's, you make it as much as possible, but there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's overrated.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about it all the time here. How do you make that balance, especially with younger kids? And I think you just find those opportunities to have the wins, and then the rest of the time it's work.
I was just with a doctor last night. He was dropping a car off to us, and he was talking about how he used to work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night in the surgery rooms, 28 days a month, and how now his kids are grown and grown. And that was the thing we talked about, was how do you find the balance of I'm providing enough for my family to create success and what is success, but also I'm around my family enough for the true success.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody has that answer, and it differs for everybody, but I think we all struggle with it.
Yeah, for us, it was we always had breakfast and dinner together. That was, I had 3 kids, they were all in sports, but it may be 10 o'clock at night, but we all ate dinner together. Yeah. Because that's the time we were able to sit down and talk. And, and Annette knows we made a switch when our second one went off to college last year. I kind of missed those family interactions. So we started doing late night, Sunday night Zoom. 8 o'clock Sunday night, we do a family Zoom. Everybody jumps on it, and it immediately got us back to the kitchen table. And that was, that's been something that's our attempt, I guess, at kind of still maintaining that work-life balance.
So funny story, I was part of an entrepreneurs group here locally, and about, I think it was 10 of us were sitting around the table having dinner, and somebody said, raise your hand if you really would rather have a job right now. And 9 out of 10 people raised their hand, right? And then the second question was, if you had to have any kind of job, what would it be? And my response is, I really want to be a hotel doorman, right? And I don't know where that came from, to be honest with you, but the thought in my mind was, wouldn't it be nice to go work your shift, get in your car, and not think about work anymore?
Yeah.
And that was the overriding consensus. So when you talk about the work-life balance, it requires your family, your spouse, your kids, whatever. They have to give you space. They have to be a part of what you're doing at some level. And Kurt's situation, his wife is there basically every day working hand in hand with my wife. You know, she has come in from time to time and helped me when I've just got nothing left in the tank, and she's lifted me up and supported me. You know, and that's great when she was there, but when she's not there, she's doing the same thing as well. You know, she's doing that from home. She's being understanding. She's, sorry, honey, I know it's Saturday at noon, but I got to run out and meet with this person. Okay, no problem. So it does take not just a individual with that entrepreneurial bent, but I think it takes the family to be supportive of that.
Takes a village.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to piggyback on that, your typical day-to-day, do you each have like one non-negotiable? Like it's got to get done, whether it's a workout or like Morgan said, a breakfast with the family. Do you have that kind of worked in there?
You know, for me, it's certainly varied. You know, I have 3 adult kids, and so yeah, when they were younger, you know, I always took the kids to school. That was my thing in the morning. So I never had any meetings, you know, earlier than whatever 8:30. As I've gotten older, I don't have that much of a rigid structure anymore. So nothing particular comes to mind now.
Yeah, and I'm going through a growth phase right now, so unfortunately I've kind of given up on a lot of that. But to Michael's point, I do, you know, that school drop-off every morning, and Mondays and Wednesdays I coach youth lacrosse. I'm out of the office 2:00. That's a hard one. Although as I say that today, I won't be out of the office, not because of this, because
Right.
we're getting ready to open a new location, so I'm going there. But I'd like to get more regimented and do some other things. And once this summer's over and Park and Social is open, I'm back on it.
Yeah,
Yep.
good. Well, all right, so we're going to kind of transition to our last little area. We call it plead the fifth. So we're going to ask you hopefully some tough questions. You can plead the fifth on one of them. The other ones you have to answer. We're not going to tell you how many there are, so we're just going to kind of jump into it. All right. Annette, you want to start us?
Worst business decision you ever made?
That's an easy one for me. I think I alluded to this earlier, but you know, at the end of 2023, I had my warehousing company was doing very well. The properties that I own were doing very, very well. And I came home one day and I said, honey, I'm bored. And that was a very bad decision, because what came after that was, you know, some things that weren't successful. As I think as most entrepreneurs, if you do it throughout your entire career, you're going to have some swings and misses. And I kind of jumped into some things for the wrong reasons, you know, because I was bored. It wasn't because I thought through them properly. It wasn't because I was passionate about them. I just kind of wasn't challenged at what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And that ended up, you know, not being a fun couple of years.
On my side, it's a couple of hires. I typically hire and fire based on core values, and I got a little ahead of myself and hired without those core values for a few individuals who are no longer with us, and caused a bit of the cancer situations we talked about earlier. But it's probably the biggest one to date. But I'm still young in my entrepreneurial career, so we'll see. Hopefully I don't top that.
Biggest pressure you feel right now?
You know, and maybe this is being a little too open, but here goes. Biggest pressure for me right now is to finish well. You know, I don't want to say I'm on my last lap, but I don't have a whole lot of laps left. And, you know, when I was younger, I always felt like I could screw this up, land on my feet, do something else. And I've lost that of late. You know, I'm starting to think, wow, you know, I gotta finish strong. I gotta go out gracefully. So I wasn't aware of that pressure that creates.
That's good. That's good.
Interesting.
You don't have to worry about that. I think the biggest pressure for me right now is just the time. You know, I feel like I've bit off more than I could chew in terms of I'm opening a shop, I'm moving the existing one into that new shop. You know, again, talk about lacrosse. I'm the vice president of the lacrosse club. I coach a team. That's ramping up at the exact same time, as well as park and socials, you know, really ramping up as well. So time is the hardest thing I have right now in trying to manage that work-life, you know, integration that I mentioned. I think that's time right now is my biggest stressor and pressure.
Good.
Go ahead.
All right, for you specifically, worst car that everyone loves.
Worst car that everyone loves. I'm going to alienate a lot of my customer base with this.
You can plead the fifth, remember.
Yeah, no, I'm an open book. I think it's the G-Wagon.
Okay.
And I'm going to say why, because everyone I know loves it until about a year later, and they get rid of it and go get something else. So it's not my take on it, but it's just what everyone's feedback is on the G-Wagon. They all love them until a year later, then they get rid of them and say they'll never get another one.
Interesting.
Interesting. What advice would you, I mean, really, is there advice, you can plead the fifth certainly, but is there advice to someone that you would give that's kind of sitting with a decision right now and they haven't like moved forward?
And discernment is the king of all decisions, right? And if we all had the ability to properly discern our way through every decision, we'd be happier, wealthier, wiser, whatever. But paralysis by analysis is an equal killer. So someone told me early on in my career, it's not a bad thing to take risk as long as you understand the risk that you're taking. So if you understand the risk or you understand the parameters of your decision, go for it. Whether it's yes or no, stick to it, and things should work out for you.
I got two quotes on that one. One, I'm going to quote The Sopranos. More is lost by indecision than wrong decision. And number two, this is my old boss at McCormick said this, don't let perfect get in the way of great.
Yep.
I think a lot of people overanalyze things and do exactly that.
Well, and the quicker you make a decision, the quicker you find out was that the right one or the wrong one, and then you adjust. So for the warehouse business, what's either the hardest thing or scariest thing to store, like or the hardest to deal with when it comes to storage?
You know, I never had any problem with inanimate objects. I think that I'll go back to B school on that one. The hardest thing to store is 100% of one thing because you've got all your eggs in one basket. So in the warehousing business, we try as much as possible to diversify our commodity, so to speak. You know, we've lived through a lot of turbulent times in the last 5 years in that business, and I've been fortunate enough. It always feels like when one or two customers, their business is off, there are 2 or 3 customers whose business is on the grow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the reason why I even said plead the fifth, you know, earlier about giving advice is because that person might be in that stable corporate job and they're looking for advice. Should I pull the trigger and leave? And that's a tough one, right? Like you said, it has to be a calculated risk because they might be giving up that steady paycheck that puts food on the table for the unknown of what, you know, the future brings of being an entrepreneur. So,
Looking back, in the future, looking back, Park and Social, what do you hope, what do you want people to think of when they see that?
Gosh, that's a layup. Thank you for that one. I mean, the whole vision for me is, you know, I use the expression every once in a while, bringing back normal, okay? And I grew up in a generation where families were together and they had routines. And through that process, they created a lot of memories. And so I have this, I don't know, some people say crazy vision that 20 years from now, if Park and Social is a thriving, members only club, and certainly the founding members and members that will come shortly thereafter are still kicking it around and sitting around a table talking about how many great times they had at Park and Social and how impactful it was on their lives and their kids' lives and their friends' lives and the relationships that they developed by being a member there.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk all the time, kind of great ambition and success without contributions is without significance. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we strive to do. And there's a lot of worry and stress that come with finances, and it takes people out of the moment, to your point. So a lot of what we do for individuals or businesses is if we can take that stress off the plate, now you can get back to normal, getting back to kind of enjoying what you've spent all this time to get to, is really important.
And I know you mentioned your kids are still quite young, but with having older children, is that talk of, hey, you're going to take over the family business, or what does that look like?
I've been able to dodge that one so far. All three of my kids are gainfully employed and off the payroll, so to speak, and pursuing their own careers and going down very different paths. And, there are days when I fantasize about, the Clark family dynasty. But then, there are realities that strike of, I live in a meritocracy, and family members can upset that. So I haven't had to confront it. I don't know ultimately what my decisions would be and my direction would be if I do have to confront it, but for now, knock on wood, it's not an issue.
Thanks for sharing.
So as we kind of finish up here, kind of a 2-minute drill, toughest decision you've had to make as a business owner?
Aren't they all tough?
It's hard to pinpoint one.
Or the most uncertain decision you had to make?
I think they're all uncertain. I think that's, yeah. I mean, I've started new businesses from scratch that I wasn't particularly experienced in that business. A lot of uncertainty, and I've admittedly had mixed success. I wish I could find the exact formula of why some work and why they don't. If I knew that, we probably wouldn't all be here today. But they're all hard decisions, and yeah, I think when you get down to who do you invest in, people-wise, and how much leeway and trust do you give them to carry out their tasks, to operate your business, I think they're very, very hard decisions.
It's interesting. As I asked the question, I'm kind of going through the answers for us as well. And I don't think we've ever had difficulty making business decisions. Where I find the most regret is on the hiring side and on the individual side. I want them to succeed. I hope for them to succeed, but you can't make them. And that, that hiring and getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seat, I think that's kind of the secret sauce to being a really good business owner. I don't know how you do it other than trial and error. I wish there was a blueprint for it, but I know for us as well, it's just getting the right people and getting them in the right spots.
So I'll go ahead and answer that one.
Yeah.
Right? So I was avoiding it, thinking about pleading the fifth, but what did I say earlier? I'm an open book. I'm not. It's not that it's the hardest decision, but currently I'm in a state of second guessing. So I am growing hugely. I'm almost doubling my space for this new shop, and I'm in that spend, outfit it, get it ready. I'm there last night. I'm there every night, right? Off hours. Mike's like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, as soon as I'm done these 19,000 other things, right? And I'm in that, like, am I doing the right thing? I know I'm doing the right thing. But as business owners, we sit here and question what we've done until we're successful, and we make it successful. I just shared on my Instagram earlier, what's my superpower? It's I don't quit. And that's the truth of it is I've told my parents that when they're like, you sure you want to do this? I'm like, I'll make it work. And I know how to make it work, but right now I'm not there in those four walls of 10,000 square feet delivering against my strategy, against my vision. And I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I am doing the right thing, but it's the hardest decision
Yeah.
because I'm not actually there yet.
I think what Kurt just said is maybe sums up this whole podcast, right? It's, making the hard decisions, trying to live with the second guessing, but most importantly, never quitting.
Yeah.
And that's my only formula. But the second guessing, man, in the meantime, will kill you.
Yeah.
It does for sure. So to piggyback on that, what is one word that you each get one word that you would use to describe entrepreneurship? One word. Make it count.
Determination.
Discipline.
Nice.
Perfect. Well, listen, we can't thank y'all enough for being here, really talking about kind of your business. And again, our hope in all of this is really provide kind of that mentorship for up and coming business owners where they have access to mentors they don't normally have access to. I know Annette will, again, touch on the businesses, but I can't thank y'all enough for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's been fun.
Yeah, and if anyone's local to all of our followers, we have Park and Social and Detail Solutions. So visit Kurt and Michael, and we can't thank you enough for being here today on Behind the Frame.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.